Hello everyone and welcome back to another Black Desert video. So today I wanted to talk about the best current food buffs, elixirs, and everything you can use for both PvE and PvP. So everyone is looking to improve their trash loot when they're grinding or do better and perform better in PvP. So I thought I'd make a little bit of a list and update it from the last time we made this video and talk about things that are currently used in different situations and scenarios that I think they would be used. So with that said, let's get started. So first of all, I made a little bit of a list, and the first thing we talk about is food. So the thing I have is basically 3 different foods. One is for life skills, so you guys can ignore that one. But for most people, I would say about 99% of you, simple cron meal is going to be the way to go for PvE, simply because extra AP against monsters just goes a long way, and it's very cheap to get. So you know, the bonus of everything else, like special attack damage of down attacks and everything, is always good, plus the extra AP. So for PvE, 99% of you, this is going to be the one you use. And for PvPers, exquisite meal is probably the one that is used more. You could use this in PvE as well, but you know, it really depends on where you grind and the places you're grinding, because if you're way over gear capped, you're probably going to want to do more special attacks and everything, where the whole like extra AP against monsters is less relevant at different places. But I would say very scenario based. Exquisite is more used for PvP and very specific places for PvE. And then, of course, seafood cron meal is, you know, just life skills. So I don't know how many of you guys have been playing BDO for years, but back in the day, if you've heard of this thing called 4 food rotation, it was like, you know how foods last for 120 minutes, right? And it's kind of outdated now just because, you know, crons exist, which I think is overall a good thing. But a lot of the stuff that you could find, like stuff that you would turn in to make meals and everything, like all of these, people would combine them and actually pop these every 30 minutes on cooldown, and people would actually use them, and that was the equivalent of crons back in the day. So yeah, for all of you new players out there, crons are actually good. The next thing we have is elixirs, drafts, and perfumes. So I will start off by saying harmony drafts are the best in slot. However, they cost more for the minimal advantage you get. Blue elixirs, they're kind of, you know, slowly fading out of existence just because people just want the best in slot, like more stat buffs and everything. So harmonies will do that. And depending on where you grind, you know, sometimes you may not even need harmonies. So if you're like not at the end game and you're kind of like a little overgeared to spot you're grinding, obviously harmonies will be better, but an alternative is probably the magical frenzy draft, and these also can combine into the 1 hour version, which is just a lot easier to manage and a lot cheaper. So if you want the best in slot for everything, species harmonies are the way to go. Demi-human and Comma Sylvians are probably the 2 most important ones. For more higher end, like really end game, demi-humans are probably more valuable, and slightly under, like top tier, is Comma Sylvia, but they're, you know, they're both good, and it really just depends on ultimately where you grind. So, and then human is very specific. This is more used for PvP, but also there are a few enemy types that are humans, so that's a thing you can do. But yeah, if you don't think you want to spend all that money and you just want a cheaper alternative, magical frenzies, these are usually 15 minutes, but what you can do is combine it with these things, the magical elixirs. So it's like 2 in 1. So instead of like 30 minutes, you can get an hour version. You guys probably have a bunch of these, and yeah, you can just combine them, especially if you grind Underwater Sakraya. Blue elixirs, if you have them and just trying to get rid of them, you know, like get rid of them. But ultimately, these are still what I used, and although it's outdated, it's significantly cheaper. Basically, it's all of this stuff, and you're better off just using harmony. But yeah, the next thing what I'm going to talk about is the difference in perfumes. So Perfume of Courage and Elixir of Deep Sea. These are both very important perfume types, and you can only use one of them at a time. So here's how it works. If you are under AP cap, let me show you an example. Let's take the new spot, the Elvia or Zekia, right? What you want to do is look at the total stats right here. So 1100. If your number is under this one and it's red, you are going to be using a Perfume of Courage. If your number is higher than the spot, like for example, you see how it's green? That means you are over the AP cap. So what you would do is, since you don't need the extra AP from the Courage, what you're going to want to do is use Elixir of Deep Sea, because it gives more special attack damage. And although this one has, you know, more AP and HP, this one has a lot of special attack damage, so back, down, air, and like half the AP. So that's the difference on which elixirs you should use, and, you know, just how to find out which one you should use. So I still think Perfume of Courage is more for a majority of players, and people who are overcapped on the highest spots would use this. So Deep Sea is more for higher end players or people who want to grind lower end stuff that they're way overgeared for, and Courage gives the plus 20 to help you reach the cap. So yeah, aside from that, I guess extra things I want to talk about: whale tendon potions. Blue one's probably the most manageable. The other one I use is Sturdy, which is 3000. Most people won't need them. The people who will need them is the people, if you grind, like, one place that I actually started using them a lot was the new Elvia or Zekia spot. And I made the mistake twice in a row of grinding this at nighttime, and these kind of hurt. So if you grind like very high end spots, make sure to have these on hotkey and be ready. I don't use them often, but you know, it's nice to have. The next thing we want to talk about is tent and villa buff. So I've talked about this in previous videos, where there are two routes. You can go the paid one, which is the permanent version, and the do the quest one. So I have a video of that. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to watch it once again. But essentially, the quest one, you have to renew and get the pieces every 7 days. And let me see if I can find it. Is it Old Moon? Yeah, like these pieces right here. These are essentially the equivalent of these things right here. So essentially the same pieces, right? What you're going to want to do is get the Villa Scroll. If you have the, where is it? Secret Book of Old Moon, this allows you to buy buffs at the campsite without the Villa Scroll. If you don't have the Villa Scroll, what I would do is leave a character at one of these places over here. And where is it? They turn off. Where is it? The villa spots. So you'll see a blue thing on the map, and it just shows you like where all the villas are. Let me see. Where are they actually? They used to be like a blue icon. I guess maybe not now, but either way, you'll find some blue icons, and it'll just be like villa. That's how you find them. And then what you want to do is get one of these every time. It is always worth getting them. Like, it's 1 million silver for an hour of grinding. Most people grind in 1 hour intervals anyway. So even if you're doing like 2 hours, just get 2, but like 60 minutes and everything, always worth. Along with the church buffs. You could buy these at the church as well, but they're slightly more expensive by the convenience of buying it from the tent. And then the loot buff, the one you should always be using is the 51, unless it gets you over a cap. And get the one that gets you closest to 300 or to 300 without going over too much. And the church buffs over here, all you really need is AP and defensive. If you're going for XP, that's cool too, but realistically, red and blue are the way to go. And if you're in town, what you would want to do for the church buffs is one, you could do this church, this icon right here, and it'll lead you, basically every town has it. One NPC would have this one, and you're basically buying the same thing, but for at the actual place where a little bit cheaper. So it's one of those things where if you just forget to pre-buff, it's not really a big deal, but you could save money by doing it instead. The next thing we want to talk about is the Heidel buff. Now, some people know this and some people don't. This is the one where you get the extra crit damage buff, and it is over here. So this lady right here, Carolyn, she has a buff to kindness, and I'll just buy it to show you what it is. For 25 energy, you get this buff right here. 10% crit damage for 10 or 30 minutes. I wish it was an hour, but 30 minutes is fine. If they had the option of being like, here, 50 energy for 1 hour, cool. Maybe even 100 energy, people would still do it. So it's definitely worth doing. Crit damage is always nice. And if you didn't know about it, now you do. The next thing we want to talk about is furniture buffs. Now, this one is something that sometimes I forget to do as myself because there's already so many buffs that I have to remember, and this is not like high on the list of them. But you should start getting into the habit of them. So these things that you put into your house, there's like, here, extra buffs. Yeah, you should probably do those. So you can buy these off the market as well. They should be under decoration. And the ones you should buy are the ones over here. Anything that gives you all AP is always good. So like the boss ones, and like the cheaper they are, the less stats they give. So generally, rule of thumb is the top 4 over here, the ones that are most expensive. Get the one you can actually buy because they give a little bit of a different thing. So like Kudum Lamp is 15 AP. They all give plus 15, but this one gives all resistance. This one gives stamina, HP, and like more all resistance. So it really just depends what you're grinding. All you really want is plus 15, and any extra stats is a bonus. I'd recommend the plus 100 HP if you're grinding higher end spots, or more stamina if you move around a lot and learning things. But for resistance ones, I talk about this in crystals, where like you could just build differently and still get 100%. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the video. The next thing I want to talk about is horse buffs. Now this one is something you kind of have to go out of your way for, and I don't think you can actually buy them on the regular, at least not here on the NA. So there's 3 different kinds of buffs. Let me show you. They're called Krogdalo, and there's 3 different kinds: the earth, wind, and sea. Most people want the wind just because it gives more AP, plus 5 AP for 1 hour, always nice. Earth one gives an extra 3 DR and 3 evasion, so that's like the defensive one. And this one gives 100 HP and stamina. These do stack, but you can't use them all at the same time. Let me show you how it works. So you get on your horse, and if you look at my buff bar, the wind's roar plus 5 AP. However, you can't use another one for another 5-minute cooldown. So for example, all of you who have the Krogdalo Sanctuary, you can't just go like bam and then pull out the other one. I do have all 3 sets, by the way, but you still can't do it. So the best thing to do if you're grinding a party spot is have someone with every single buff, and that's what I have as well. So like if someone pops a wind, I'll pop like an earth or a sea, depending on whatever. But if you're grinding solo, the one you really want is wind, and that one just gives more AP. So how do you find it? These things right here, these stone fragments of whatever. The gray ones are for wind, yellow and blue are for earth and sea. And the best way to grind them, the way I did it anyway, was down when I was going for my infinite potion back in the day, down in the Navern Step. If if you kill the bird thingies and like gather and everything, yeah, these kind of drop a lot. So like 1 or 2 hours of doing circles here, it'll give you enough to make one of the pieces, plus a bunch of other things, but that's how you get the fragments. If you're looking for earth, I believe Ronaros gives earth, and then C comes from, I don't remember where the C ones that come from, but do the dailies and they give you some. Next thing we want to talk about is lightstones and artifacts. So depending on where you grind is actually very important. So let me show you. For example, the best lightstone artifact combo is all out attack. This gives you the most damage output. However, it reduces your evasion and damage reduction. So it's kind of like the glass cannon set. And this kind of mitigates it if you have the Kabuas that give more monster damage reduction and HP and everything. So it kind of mitigates it a little bit, but this is the highest damage output. Otherwise, for everyone else, you could just do species damage. So it's like 3 Fallen for Kama Sylvia and an Iridescent, or 3 Roars and an Iridescent. So it'll give you plus 30, plus 15 from the effect, and each plus 5 for each extra Lightstone. So it's plus 30 total. Really just depends where you're grinding. If you don't really like to think about it a lot, just go all out attack. It's, you know, more damage, be alert a little bit, and you'll be fine. For all of you who go defensive, this is still in the works and testing. I'm still trying to get a second one, by the way. So 2 Dekia artifacts are all DR. There's the evasion one as well. And then I'm just going to put straight DR. And I don't use it for PvE as much, but for PvP, I tested this. And, you know, if I had 2 of them, it'd be even better. But so far, I actually noticed a difference. And this is coming from a Dark Knight, like, you know, one of the squishiest classes in the game. I did notice myself surviving a little bit more with this one. So damage kind of went down a little bit, but it's okay. Survivability went up, which is nice. We talked about all the other ones for PvP. These are all life skills, by the way. I talked about that in another video. And for PvPers, one thing I like to use is all human damage, which is essentially like the species, but for humans. You could use this in PvE, but more PvP. So then what I have this on is magic accuracy. Accuracy is the most important, not necessarily the magic. I'm a Dark Knight, I use it on there, but accuracy for PvP is always important. Human damage, more damage, very nice, right? Cool. So that's what I use. There's a few alternative options for the best ones you can get. And I guess I should mention that comma, or not comma, but like species damage, if you are over the cap of, you know, what we were talking about, if you are over this number, you know, wherever you grind, that is, comma damage goes past that AP cap. If you are not on over this number and it's red, more AP was better. So like, you know how we talked about the 2 different perfumes before, like Courage and Deep Sea. So think about that, but essentially for species damage and AP damage as well. So the next thing I want to talk about are crystals, because we've talked about that before. So I have a very detailed video of this, and I'll leave a link in the description. But I go over every single one of these, and this is kind of like a 30-40 minute video, so just watch that at your own time if you care. But essentially, this is what I use for most things. I'm still working on the new void crystals, but, you know, it's not the point. But anyway, things you should get, and the things that are important, just more extra AP against monsters, and any other, like, crit damage is always nice, and, you know, not species, but special attack damage, always cool. And we talked about this earlier, how if you are not capped at places where you need resistance, like Ash Forest, for example, you get knocked down a lot. What you would want to do is start putting in like RBF crystals for resistances and all of these. So I have different things for different ones. You don't need all the slots I do. You just swap out crystals based on what you need. I talk about that in the other video, so we're not going to get into that. But for most people, this is the most damage output. I just have to swap out some things for voids, and then we'll be caught up on crystals again. So next thing I want to talk about is add-ons. This is something a lot of new players, especially people who make new seasonal characters and new players, forget, because it's not really like, you don't really talk about it as much. But here's what I would recommend for all of you guys. You see this thing right here? These are all your add-ons. What you want to do, no matter what class you play, is start lining up the skills you use the most. So what does that mean? Let's take this skill, for example, Spirit Legacy. It has a 9-second cooldown. When you use this skill, you could get 2 extra buffs for everything. And so you kind of want to pick skills that have at least 9 seconds on it. So that means, in theory, you should have 100% uptime on these skills. Obviously, it doesn't work that way if you're like learning a class, but you want to basically make sure you can get it as close to 100. So, for example, 9-second cooldown. These 2 buffs last for 12 seconds and 10 seconds. You know, like, this is a special thing because, you know, I'll talk about that more in detail like another time, but essentially, like, this is a good skill, so you kind of make an exception. But for your mandatory skills in your rotation, you basically want to make sure that cooldown lower, skill effect higher, and 100% cooldown or as close to it as possible. And that's how you want to do it. So for PvE, things you want are extra AP against monsters, high priority, DP down for target, and then the rest of it is just straight damage of whatever type you do. For PvPers, the other one you want to get is extra damage against humans. It works a little bit differently for PvP add-ons because you use things differently. So like damage against humans is nice for PvP, and debuffing other players for evasion and accuracy always nice, and like different things. So basically, to give you a number or like things in a nutshell, more damage for PvE always good. So special attack, more straight up monster AP. And for PvP, debuffs are very strong, and of course more more offensive as well for you. So yeah, that's how you build it. So that was just kind of like general tips for no matter what class you play. And I think I talked about everything. So quick recap: food, elixirs, tent buff, church buff, Heidel, like the crit damage buff, furniture, horse, lightstones, artifacts, add-ons, and more crystals. Yeah. Aside from that, if you have a fairy, just set it. And here's what I use for the most part. Like, if you don't have a continuous care 5, here's how you do it. You put your food on, like you manually pop it. You put your food on the hotbar and then click the button. You put your harmony draft on a button and hotkey that one as well. And then, you know, you really only need 3 buffs if you're using like the things I told you. Back in the day before we had harmonies, this is actually what it will look like, and that's why we have continuous care. So when you're grinding, these would just pop manually all the time. Harmonies are actually really nice and convenient. So this is what it looked like back in the day. This is what it looks like now. Harmonies take 15 slots, I believe. So like 15 of the 20. So it's better if you don't have a max one, just put this on a hotkey and then push it every 15 minutes, and then you're good to go. Like, literally not a problem. If I was a new player, this is what I would do. And yeah, that's about it. Any other buffs you get are literally event food buffs and like any other things that stack. So for example, I don't know, this thingy we got a while ago, or literally any other buff that gives stats. So with that said, thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the comments. You can join the Discord as well, ask me questions. And if you need gear help with anything, we have a channel for that in Discord. Just upload a screenshot and I'll point you in the right direction. So thanks so much for watching once again, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.